Some towns are not found on any map. They appear only when you're lost, only when fate decides you should see them. Ravenshade is one of those places. A town where the lights never go out, the streets are always empty, and the whispers never stop. Tonight, you'll hear the story of Emily, a young woman who thought she was just passing through. But once you see Ravenshade, it never lets you go. It was a cold autumn evening when Emily drove into the small town of Ravenshade. She wasn't planning to stay long, just passing through on her way to the city. But her car broke down at the very edge of town, right under a flickering streetlight that buzzed strangely in the silence. She looked around and noticed something odd. Every single house had its lights on, even though it was nearly midnight. At first, Emily thought it was a coincidence. Maybe the town was celebrating something? But as she walked through the empty streets, dragging her suitcase behind her, she realized there was no sound of laughter, no movement in the windows, just glowing lights staring back at her, as if the houses themselves were awake. She found a small diner on the corner and decided to step inside. The bell above the door jingled, but no one came out to greet her. The tables were set, food half-eaten, and coffee still steaming in cups, as if the people had just vanished moments before she arrived. Emily's heart raced. She called out,
"Hello? Is anyone here?"
but only silence answered. Her phone had no signal, and the nearest mechanic wouldn't arrive until morning. So, she had no choice but to spend the night in Ravenshade. She picked the only inn she could find, the Night Owl Inn, a crooked building with creaking wooden steps. The innkeeper, an old woman with pale eyes, greeted her with a faint smile.
"Stranded, are you? Don't worry, you'll be safe here, as long as you don't open your window after midnight."
Emily laughed nervously, thinking it was just a local superstition, but the woman's serious expression made her uneasy. The room she was given was small, with lace curtains and a single lamp glowing dimly. She unpacked and tried to sleep, but every time she closed her eyes, she heard whispers outside her window, low, distorted voices calling her name. When the clock struck 3 a.m., Emily gathered her courage and peeked through the curtain. To her horror, the streets below were filled with people, hundreds of them, standing perfectly still, all facing her window. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dark, and their mouths moved silently, as though chanting something she couldn't hear. Terrified, Emily stumbled back, knocking over the lamp. The room went dark. She hid under the blanket, trembling, until she eventually fell asleep. In the morning, she rushed downstairs to ask the innkeeper what she had seen. The old woman only shook her head.
"You looked when you shouldn't have. Now they know you."
Determined to leave, Emily rushed to her car, only to find it repaired. The strange thing was, she hadn't called a mechanic. She didn't even see anyone working on it. The hood was spotless, the engine running perfectly. Against her better judgment, she drove out of Ravenshade as fast as she could. For days, she tried to forget what had happened. But at night, no matter where she was, she noticed the same thing. Lights in every house on her street stayed on. People stood outside her window at 3 a.m., staring up at her, whispering her name. It was as if Ravenshade had followed her. And then one morning, Emily woke to find a note slipped under her door. The handwriting was shaky, as though written in a rush.
"You left too soon. Come back. The town never lets go."
Emily stared at the note for what felt like hours, her hands trembling. Who had left it? How did they know where she lived? Her apartment was locked from the inside, no signs of forced entry. She tried to convince herself it was just her imagination, but the words echoed in her mind. The town never lets go. That night, Emily locked every door and window, pulled the curtains tight, and left the lights on. She promised herself she wouldn't look outside. But as the clock crept toward 3 a.m., the whispers began again, low, rasping voices that seemed to seep through the walls. She pressed her hands against her ears, but the voices grew louder, clearer. They weren't just calling her name anymore. They were saying,
Come back, Emily. You belong to us.
Unable to resist, she peeked through a gap in the curtains. Her heart nearly stopped. On the street below, the same glowing-eyed crowd from Ravenshade stood in silence, staring straight up at her apartment. Except this time, she recognized some of the faces, her neighbors, her mailman, even a woman she had seen at the grocery store earlier that day. Emily backed away from the window in terror. Were they all part of Ravenshade now? Had the town infected them somehow? She didn't know, but she knew she couldn't stay there any longer. The next morning, she packed a bag, jumped into her car, and started driving without a destination. Highways, back roads, endless stretches of countryside. She didn't care where she went, as long as it was far away. But no matter how far she drove, she kept seeing signs that chilled her to the bone. Gas stations with every pump already running, but no attendants. Motels with rooms wide open, TVs flickering, but no guests. Small towns where every single window glowed with light, even at dawn. It was as though the world was slowly turning into Ravenshade. Exhausted, she finally stopped at a rest area. A young man sat on a bench, head in his hands. When she approached him, he looked up with haunted eyes.
You've seen them too, haven't you?
He whispered. Emily froze.
What do you mean?
The ones who stare. The ones who whisper your name. You can't run from them. I've been driving for weeks and they're always there. Once you see Ravenshade, it never lets you go.
Before she could reply, Emily's phone buzzed. She hadn't had service in days. When she pulled it out, her screen was flooded with messages, hundreds of them, all from an unknown number. Every single message was the same, "Come back." Emily dropped the phone, her breath coming in quick gasps. The young man just shook his head, as if he already knew what the messages said. "They won't stop until you return," he muttered. "But the question is, what happens if you do?" Emily sat frozen at the rest area bench, the stranger's words repeating in her head, "Once you see Ravenshade, it never lets you go." She wanted to deny it, to scream that it wasn't true, but deep down she already knew. For days, she tried resisting. She kept driving, kept hiding, kept pretending that Ravenshade wasn't pulling her back. But the signs grew worse. Every night at 3 a.m., no matter where she was, the glowing-eyed figures appeared. The whispers grew louder, clearer. And the faces, oh, the faces, they were no longer strangers. They were her family, her friends, people she hadn't seen in years, all staring silently as if waiting for her decision. Finally, exhaustion broke her. She could no longer fight. With shaking hands, Emily turned her car around and followed the empty roads back to where it all began. The journey felt strange, like the world itself was bending to guide her back. Street signs changed, pointing only toward one word, Ravenshade. When she crossed the town's border, the air grew heavy, the sky darker than night though it was still afternoon. Every house blazed with light, every window glowing like a watchful eye. The streets were silent, but Emily knew she wasn't alone. The crowd appeared again, hundreds of them, lining the sidewalks. This time, they didn't whisper. They simply watched as Emily stepped out of her car. Their eyes glowed brighter, almost welcoming. At the end of the street stood the old innkeeper from the Night Owl Inn. Her pale eyes fixed on Emily, and she spoke in a voice that seemed to echo through every building, every wall.
You've returned, at last.
Emily swallowed hard.
Why me? What do you want from me?
The old woman's lips curled into a faint smile.
Ravenshade chooses. Once it sees you, you belong. We are not trapped, child. We are eternal. And now, so are you.
Before Emily could move, the crowd surged forward, not attacking, but surrounding her, their glowing eyes blinding. She felt herself sinking, as if the ground itself was pulling her under. The whispers rose again, deafening now. until her own voice joined theirs without her meaning to. When the light faded, Emily stood in front of a mirror inside the inn. Her reflection stared back, but her eyes glowed faintly, just like theirs. She opened her mouth, and the words came out against her will, "Welcome to Ravenshade." The town had claimed her, and from that night on, every stranger who wandered too close would see the lights that never went out, hear the whispers at 3 a.m., and feel the same pull. Ravenshade was patient. Ravenshade was eternal. Because once you see Ravenshade, it never lets you go. Some places aren't just towns. Some places are traps, waiting for the next soul to pass through. And if you ever find yourself driving at night and see a small town with every light on, don't stop. Don't look back. And whatever you do, never go inside. Because Ravenshade is always watching.